will now recite the Heart Sutra in English. It's on page 10 of the program booklet. So if you could all join with me. Thus have I heard, once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajgir at Vulture's Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha of monks and a great gathering of the Sangha of Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the Samadhi, that expression Lama called profound illumination. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, saw in this way. He saw the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita? Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, O son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita, should see in this way, seeing the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness. Emptiness also is form. Emptiness is no other than form, and form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perceptions, formations, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics. There is no birth, no cessation. There is no impurity or purity. There is no decrease. There is no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no perceptions, no formations, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no eye dhatu up to the mind dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind consciousness dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance, up to the no old age and no death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the Bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the 3 times, by means of Prajnaparamita, fully awaken to unsuppressible, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra that calms all sufferings, should be known as truth, since there is no deception. The Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way: Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhi Swaha. Thus, Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family. Thus it is, O son of noble family. Thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One has said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, the whole assembly of the world, with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One.
Now I am going to recite short sentences in Tibetan about Vajrayana Sutra. We are not going to recite the whole Heart Sutra, but the mantra of the Heart Sutra. And at the beginning, Kasota, some kind of homage to highest wisdom of Buddha. Oh, now that's good. When I see the audience face, then I feel, oh, something living. In dark room, sometimes feel I'm talking to ghost. So that's much better now. Now something living now. Then two the sentences. One, the Panchaparamita Sutras was the essence, two parts. One, I think altruism and how to practice altruism. And with altruism, so how can you develop the stage to stage or step by steps. That's gati, gati, paragati, parasamgati, Buddhism also. Now that's the way to reach final destination. That's Buddhahood. So the Maitreya Bodhisattva wrote the Abhisamaya Alankara. It is homage to wisdom. And then another, the Panchaparamita Sutra. You see, in order to develop further. Of course, it's a mental sort of the experiences. So the main, main factor to increase our inner spiritual experiences, that is wisdom. So, Ajaya Nagarjuna, you see, wrote one text that's mainly explaining about emptiness or shunyata. So his, Madhyamika Mulakarikas sort of the homage to Buddha. So this we're going to recite in Tibetan. Masam jeme shara bara maje menga nange go ni so so rang re yi ji tisu je yum la cha sa lo de ada ga de para sam ga de bodhi so de ada ga de para sam ga de bodhi so de ada ga de para sam ga de bodhi so Nyande Sho Sono Geshe Geshe Tense Kanye Dola Bamba Jana Lamshi Nyeji Jikden Tendu Zap Anda Yanda Tempe Tono Napo Kunde Naso Disongpa Nyande Shanshu Sempe Sanje Jeni Yumde La Shasen Lo Kanki Tenshin Jawa Zhunga Wan Meba Jeme Ba Chaba Meba Tang Meba Wan Meba Drum Meba Tade Temi Tenshin Thangpa Now, last 2 days, some program. Mainly, you see, carried as a human being. I have 3 commitments. Number 1 commitment is, as a human being, how to bring a peaceful society. Finally, is a peaceful humanity. And automatically, the peaceful mind is the ultimate source of happy life. So irrespective whether believer or non-believer, or religious-minded or not, even people who against religion, okay, be a nice person, a warm-hearted person. Then even you see his or her anti-religious activities can be more effective, more realistic. It's too much emotion. You see, any action become unrealistic action. Okay. So that's number one commitment. And then audience here also. Firstly, you all human beings, human brothers, sisters. So we are part of 7 billion human beings. So each individual's future very much related with well-being of 7 billion human beings. So each of us have the moral responsibility to think the well-being of 7 billion human beings, and also including healthy planet like that. So that's number one commitment on human level. Now, second commitment, then as I'm Buddhist. So Buddhism is one of the a well-known spiritual tradition, mainly in Asia. So all major religious traditions inspired different philosophy, different sort of the history. But all, you see, carry message of love. And in order to practice love or affection or compassion properly, we also need practice of tolerance and forgiveness and self-discipline and contentment. All major religious traditions, you see, carry these sort of practice. So the philosophical sort of side, there are differences, but that's necessary. People with different mental disposition, we need different way to approach. So long the aim, goal is same. See, to create a sensible, nice human being. Okay. Then use different sort of philosophical views. That's a different method. So therefore, all major world religion, mainly theistic religion, non-theistic religion, theistic religion like Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and so on. Non-theistic. 가져. 그냥 가져왔다. Hello. Now better? I think best put inside my mouth. Okay, a better sound. Okay. So, all major, the non-theistic religion, mainly in India, over 3,000 years, I think ancient sort of, Indian tradition is Sankhya philosophy. Within Sankhya philosophy, 2 branches. One branch accept creator. One, no creator. No concept of creator. And then Jainism and Buddhism. These 3 ancient Indian religions are basically non-theistic religion. no concept of creator, but rather self-creation. So, main sort of philosophical view is law of causality, cause and effect, like that. So, philosophical fields, many differences. Even within Buddhism, there are sort of different philosophical views. Therefore, in the Nalanda tradition, four schools of thought: Vivashik, Sothantik, Chittamantra, Madhyamika. And within these four sects, also sect or division, also there. So these different philosophical views of different Buddhist school of thought, mainly is taught by Buddha himself. So Buddha taught contradictory different philosophy to his own disciple. Sometimes I jokingly is telling people that is not due to Buddha's own mind, not very clear. Some confusion in Buddha's own mind. So one day he taught this, another day he taught something different. Certainly not that. No, Buddha deliberately tried to create more confusion among his disciples. No, certainly not. So then answer is, it is necessary. Among his own disciples, there are different mental disposition. So therefore, it is necessary to tell, to teach different philosophical views which suitable the individual sort of disciple according to their own mental disposition. So like that. So that really is helpful to understand. Oh, there are many different religious traditions. It's a different philosophy. Then, yes, there are people or different sort of, I think way of life, and also climate condition also different. The area, some are more dry, some are more vegetation area, like that. So with that environment, people, you see, different way of life, with that different culture. So that also, you see, impact different sort of mental disposition. So therefore, obviously, we need different way of approach to be sensible human being, compassionate human being. So, looking that way, then there is common ground. We can live together and carry one's own faith. Now, India is, I usually call, living example. Most populated democratic country in the world. You see, 1,000 years, at least I think more than 2,000 years, all major religious tradition, you see, well established in India, including Zoroastrianism. Now, very small number, less than 100,000, but very happily they settled there. They carry through generations their own religious faith, Zoroastrianism, Parsi community, like that. So therefore, India, beside homegrown religions, most major world outside major world religious tradition also, you see, eventually reach in India, and thousands followers there. Basically, live very harmoniously. So therefore, it is very possible. People with different faith can live together harmoniously. So, since it is something very possible, religious harmony, so then now unfortunately in the past human history, conflict in the name of religion, it happened. Even today, in the name of religion, some conflict will happen. So therefore, we really need more effort to develop genuine harmony among different religious traditions. So, my second commitment is promotion of religious harmony. So here, suppose many of you, believer. So it is again our common responsibility. Make a contribution, promotion of religious harmony. Okay. I think like Vancouver, this place, I think a multi-racial, multi-religious sort of community. So it is, I think, some unique position, make special effort. Firstly, harmony, build genuine harmony within the area, and then show others like that. Now, third commitment, I am Tibetan. Then, as a Tibetan, so as far as political responsibility is concerned, I already retired. Not only I myself is retired, but also it's a 4-century-old tradition. Dalai Lama institution automatically become head of temple and spirituality. Now that ended. So sometimes I feel this is a tradition start during 5th Dalai Lama. So if 5th Dalai Lama comes, then what he feel? He start. Now I voluntarily ended. As a Buddhist, so we must be realistic. So the reality, now, I think, I always telling people, according to my belief, world belongs to 7 billion human beings. So then each country actually belongs to the people of that country. So some occasion in America, I express America belongs to about 300 millions of Americans, not a Republican Party or Democratic Party. So each country belongs to the people. So they ruled by the people, the country. The best system is the democratic system. Choose your own leader, and because the people choose the leader, so leader have to sort of accountable. 그죠? 가. 오늘이 T. Only small group. No rest of the people. 자동 고려교회 예고도 전도 개발 상부 상제도 강라간데 달라데 좀 버전에서 저 Later, in actual ceremony, there are a lot of kasoda, 메버즈 세몽샤야 샤노마.
Whoever is in charge of the sound, can you please keep this on? Don't make it alternate. His Holiness was saying that in the afternoon, during the actual empowerment ceremony, a large part of the ritual would involve the Guru telling you to imagine this and imagine that. So you could imagine having
So
tea.
this moment, you also have to image you also getting tea. That's enough. Thunderbird 보장 담바 내 누군데 담을 거데 뭐저 신신디 마서 재미 제가 So my main concern is preservation of Tibetan culture. Tibetan culture, since Buddhism reached Tibet, Tibetan culture then really become culture of peace, culture of non-violence, culture of compassion. So that kind of culture is really worthwhile to preserve. It's not only 6 million Tibetan people's interest, but also, you see, interest for the whole Asia, and particularly the Han brothers, sisters. Traditionally, Buddhist country. Not only Buddhist country, before Buddhism reached Tibet, the Han people, you see, already also follow Buddhism. I think at least 3-4 centuries earlier. Like that. So, and then whole Asia, there are many, many Buddhists, like that. So the proper way for preservation of Buddha Dharma is not just carry ritual. We must study. I think one unique thing about Buddhism, particularly Nalanda tradition, a lot of philosophical sort of points, and the way to study or to examine these philosophical views through logics. So as far as Buddhist logic is concerned, I think available only in Tibetan tradition. So these like Dignaag, Dharmakirti, and Shantarakshita, Kamalashila, they are writing about Buddhist logic, available in Tibetan language. So therefore, it is very, very useful. Preserve using these things. So then, therefore, whenever you say I give some teaching, I always consider important the explanation. That's very important. Just a faith, not sufficient. Buddha himself, you see, told or expressed, "O my follower, bhikshus, scholars should not accept my teaching out of faith, out of devotion, but rather thorough investigation and experiment." That is Nalanda masters, is very much emphasis at that point. So like Nagarjuna, the Arya Deva, the Buddha and then Dharmakirti. You see, they examine Buddha's own word, certain Buddha's teaching. We cannot accept literally. If we accept, then it goes against reasons. So therefore, you see, these Nalanda masters, you see, took liberty, make distinction. This Buddha's teaching, we can accept. And such sort of Buddhist teaching, we cannot accept. So it is something, I think, a unique thing. So Buddhism in general, in particularly Nalanda tradition, very much emphasis on investigation, reasoning. So therefore, in our daily meditation, two kinds of meditation. One, analytical meditation. One, single-pointed meditation, like that. So, so now today, morning, today, one short text I'm going to explain. And actually, audience should consider this session like class study. In the afternoon, the initiation of our Lokatishvara. So part ritual like that. So now I'm going to use Tibetan language and Thunderbird, and also some Chinese translation and a Vietnamese translation also, I think. So. 야, 다 안다. 샤마타고 난신기 Pali tradition da, Lecture tradition. ni chpeje yebe solchire. Ta chomdende peje denshi chongo 당부 송샤바디디 그도데 아니 되는 송기 바 레범 그것도 나네 되는 송기 대전 바 뒤체 페이지 빨리 인서리 되네니 렉자기 아니 숑그나라 아니 콜로 파르바 시징이 저거 대전직 콜로 타마 너도 공제다 지시 위닝부 돌아 쏘고 된저기 야 대전직 어따지 렉자기 주기 나라 콜로 니버도 콜로 숨어 sen 콜로 숨지 숨겨야래 콜로 당부 된 시정 거지 자다지 고드이니 페이지 딱시실라 페이지 고드 면로 제니 되네 갈리갈리야 준비게 있는 날렌다 아니 졸라랍더디 차 다 날렌다에 있는 로드로 써버티 이게 왜 캐와 먹고 쉬우지 날렌다네 정도가 디디기 somba lecture di lecture chuinari and the lecture cabinet Sanskrit scholar to take luduki zawashiruki lecture sumshi to somdanda any bandachura chamanamje lecture shungdu to take hal level lecture som 부다고 차 토부신 시부야고도 쓰네 15가치도 와. 아주 16도 와. 저서 날린지 개발도 제 망체기 패지 망체로 두래. 렉샤게 나다 패지. 좀바 망체 렉샤게 나리 더 패지 렉샤. 다 도스니 아니 좀 전에 랑게 아니 콜로 바르바도 콜로 담아도 돼야지 렉샤게 가서다 개토로 숨이스 야 지가 시기 전에 렉샤 나올 숨이야 말했으네 근데 숨에 또가 근데 이제 대보시고 산지가 말했으네 루주 뭐 중코네 야 숙셔부야래 저들이 인도 루주고 우머리 지창왔다 아니 참방건부 아니 도지gen게 배질류 니버디 이나 수버디나 지나라 대신 거룩 류직세네 또가 아니 개바디 도게 봐야나 숙심 사야래 대신 거룩 저서 어디 인도산에 대지 대퇴네 태보시모 산지가 말했으면 숙심부 용비야래 더리께서 이네 태보시모 산지가 말했으면 제네와다 콜로 바르바 시진기다 저거잖니 다 아다 조잖아제 되네니 베트남 코리아 재팬 아니 그 소보 어다 디디 레자가 치규디 조르샤 So, duwe nyamle yobe indusane ene duwe shungde yang zore sa didi indu di ene peji pali nal yodebata ene leja nal yore di pali nal yodebata di peji tumor zresha aso nangbe yudu samolola tumor zre.
So just as I explained before, within the Buddhist tradition, they evolved based on the textual tradition, two main textual traditions, one coming from the Pali sources, the other one coming from the Sanskrit sources. And at the core of the Pali teachings is really the first sermon of the Buddha's teaching on the Four Noble Truths. And the Buddha's teachings on the Four Noble Truths,
Correct.
when it was compiled at the first Buddhist council, the teachings of the Buddha were organized according to what are known as the Tripitaka, or the three baskets. The basket on discipline, the one on discourses, and one on knowledge. And so according to the Pali tradition, the sermon on the Four Noble Truths forms the foundation from which, coming from the Buddhist council, the compilation of the Buddha's teachings were organized into the three scriptural collections known as the three baskets. However, in the Sanskrit tradition, there is also a recognition of the Buddha's teaching on the second turning and the third turning of the wheel of Dharma. So in the Sanskrit tradition, there is a terminology of tradition of speaking about three turnings of the Buddha. The first being the Four Noble Truths, the second being the perfection of wisdom teachings, the Prajnaparamita Sutra, and the third includes the Samdhinirmocana Sutra, which is the sutra unraveling the intention of the Buddha. But also in the third turning, there are sutras that present the idea of the Buddha nature, the Tathagata Garbha teachings. So in the Sanskrit tradition, in addition to the first public sermon of the Four Noble Truths, we also speak of the Buddha's second turning and the third turning. So, and historically, if you look at the evolution of the Mahayana teachings, the Sanskrit tradition, perhaps one of the earliest monastic institutions was probably Takshashila, and then later Nalanda came to be the most important learning center. And if you look at today the Sanskrit collection of text, the Buddhist text, most of these great texts were written by masters of the Nalanda tradition, such as Nagarjuna and so on. And in fact, the modern Sanskrit scholars often make the remark that when they look at the quality of the Sanskrit composition of texts like Nagarjuna's Mula Madhyamaka Karika, the Fundamental Wisdom of the Middle Way, as well as Dharmakirti's Pramanavartika, commentary on valid cognition. And they say that the standard of Sanskrit composition is really advanced. So it seems that most of the great Nalanda masters such as Nagarjuna, Dharmakirti and so on really wrote primarily in Sanskrit language, not in Pali, but mainly in Sanskrit. Now all of these Sanskrit tradition really traces their sources to a collection of scriptures attributed to the Buddha. These are the Mahayana Sutras, and Mahayana scriptures, according to the Mahayana tradition, are recognized as authentic words of the Buddha, authentic teachings. Of course, it seems that very early in India itself, there were questions raised about the actual authenticity of the attribution of these sutras. And that seems to go quite early back in history. For example, in Nagarjuna's Precious Garland, there is an explicit section which deals with the defense of the Mahayana scriptures as being authentic words of the Buddha. Similarly, in Maitreya's ornament of Mahayana Sutras, there is a chapter that deals specifically with presenting the proof and evidence that the Mahayana scriptures are authentic words of the Buddha, and so on. And then the most extensive defense of Mahayana Sutras really is found in Bhavaviveka's Tarkajwala, the Blaze of Reasoning. So even today, among modern scholars, there are some who dispute the authenticity of the Mahayana as being actual words of the Buddha. So regardless of whatever may be the historicity, but the fact is, within Buddhism, there evolved two main textual traditions, the Pali traditions and the Sanskrit tradition. And it is the Sanskrit tradition that really spread primarily first to China and then to Vietnam, Korea, Japan, and Tibet, as well as Mongolia. So it's the Sanskrit tradition, textual tradition, that is the most widespread on those areas. And now within the various textual collection and the practices that go with it, the monastic discipline basket, that seems to be the foundation and common to both Pali and the Sanskrit tradition. We have Pali Pratimoksha Sutra, the fundamental discipline scripture, and similarly we find fundamental discipline scripture in the Sanskrit Mahayana tradition as well. And when it comes to the monastic disciplinary text and the practices that go with it, there seems to be not that much difference. There really seems to be the common textual collection to both the Pali and the Sanskrit tradition.
Senator, Ludulu Sobati, the Shumangunala, teaching Kadu Saji in Guyare. That teaching Kadu, although the Gobulu Registration also into the name, that saw the Ningji saw the Shani. And it take in a lambe, Chindu Yamne. That Tewachambosa saw the Disunde Yare. Santa Dindu and data Tewachimishunane Damebe Namshadi Hajan Gavoyare. Kansa Damizam Mase, Chejidame, Shujigda, Shipsauda, Gavutora, Sonyotua. Sadiri Luzane, that Tewachambosa data. 가서를 친루 냠낸다 다 간다 창주고 습니다 샴페인 창주고 습니다 전에 친루 전에 또또 시진기 시진 바로도 침배 다 시진기 가서 그게 유서를 간다디 이니 다 시진 바로도 침었을 정도 다 간다 지 동리고과대 다 하장 깨워야 되지 그래서 되게 더디님부 코로 당부가로送배 den시 상관나라 담바시 den시 담바르리아 캐주시시잖아요 캐주주로 전에다 메다 동에 동 담에 있잖아요 동 담에 있어서 다 자로 단 송상에 지 대저 첩지 아니 교 군중 rap지께 되네 고den게 고바 시와 자놈 아니 민중세네 따디 고바 시와 자놈사 디지 가다 돈이 따에 타네 드시게 올와 사티리 인도 간다 denshi 남샤디 베치 침바지 마든 드셔 타용하지 도와 반대 처라기 참한 남지 류니버스 때에나 참한 군두 참을 주고 로라 펜셔가 덤버 대시 쪽사 디디만 드셔 껴인도 전에 다 den시도 되네만 드셔디 하장도 써보도가 그래서 den시 리뷰 줘야 돼 렉자가 쇼나라다 개바다 세래요 산타 티징 거로 뭐마다 드셔야 다 전에 람 리고 두번 인진스네 람딩이 캐주시 소인도 전에 다 디디 아니 콜로 담에 디시고 있는 분 넣을까불라 유전 외세디 잘되는 소도가 세상 콜로 바로 시징 넣을까도라 유유외세디 잘되는 소 콜로 담에 치다 디시고 있는 분 넣을까불라 아니 유전 외세디 잘되는 송샤버지기 상간다 담바시우디 게셰 소리 차대요 저도 대신 거로 뭐마다 들으셔 디타나 야구 삼다나 다 되고 싶어서 이니까 인 거야지 얘는 세우 통도
So I spoke about how great masters like Nagarjuna felt the need to explain the authenticity of the Mahayana scriptures as being Buddha's teaching. And if you look at, for example, Nagarjuna's text, Precious Garland, Ratnavali, the way in which he explains his case for, showing that the Mahayana teachings are genuine teachings of the Buddha, really based upon an explanation that the essence of Mahayana teaching is really.
Mongolian. I think come here.
So the foundation of the Mahayana teachings is really the teaching on compassion and elaboration of that in the form of practice of the 6 perfections, and also furthermore, if you look carefully at the content of the Mahayana scriptures, what we see is really a further elaboration on the Buddha's teaching on no self and emptiness. So in other words, what Nagarjuna is pointing out is that Mahayana scriptures should be really seen as a further elaboration and thorough explanation and drawing out the full implications of the Buddha's teachings on the 4 Noble Truths. For example, if you look at the Buddha's teachings on the 4 Noble Truths, each of the truth, the suffering, the origin, the cessation, and the path, each of these are explained in terms of their individual characteristics. So in the case of the nature of suffering, there is dissatisfaction, impermanence, dissatisfaction, no self, and emptiness. So if you look at the Mahayana scriptures, what the Buddha, in the scriptures, what is happening is that the concept and the teaching on no self and emptiness are really elaborated upon and explained further. Similarly, if you look at the 3rd Noble Truth, which is the truth of cessation, again, the specific characteristics of the cessation is more deeply and elaborately explained in the Mahayana scriptures on the basis of the teaching on emptiness. And similarly, if you look at the characteristics of the 4th Noble Truth, which is the truth of the path, again, if you look at the Buddha's teaching in the 3rd turning of the wheel of Dharma, the teachings on the Buddha nature, what is happening is that in the teachings of the Buddha nature, the nature of consciousness, particularly the subtle nature of consciousness in the form of a luminosity is really explained in a much more deeper and elaborate manner. So in brief, what Nagarjuna is explaining is that the way in which one can understand the sort of significance of the Mahayana scriptures is seeing them as elaboration and further explanation and deeper explanation, and also explanation based on reason of the nature and characteristics of the Four Noble Truths. For example, if you look at Dharmakirti's second chapter of Pramanavartika, Commentary on Valid Cognition, which is, the second chapter is a detailed explanation of Dignaga's salutation verse of his Pramana Samuchaya. And in that second chapter, Dharmakirti explains the qualities of the Buddha, and particularly in terms of a very thorough and detailed explanation of the nature and characteristics of the Four Noble Truths. So if you look at these presentations, then you can really get a sense and appreciate the significance and the contribution the Mahayana scriptures is making in elaborating and deepening our understanding of the Buddha's teaching.
Tene sanga doji thekwa sadi. Ngar jagale ene sanga doji thekwa de ene Hindu da Hindu sanga yore. Sada Hindu chulu so nambal so drever mado. De nangbe sanga yo marisin. Ngar jagale sumedo wa tarikese ine shukshimbu yore. Chene da zawa motivi shugunale ene chigi ene lungun nanjo dagana shingi chigi ene tumun nanjo desu chaydi jiboduwa kada zolung tigli nyamne diyedi motivi sanga shungre yore nga luji nga jaga anda motivi ngajang chigi ngajang 지금이 그죠. 전에다 동무다. 애니 롱품전 송야. 다 단다 그리는 메신. 시 롱품전 송야. 애니 포와. 다가는 신 종주 대주제 이해버리셔. 모두 쇼나래. 저번에 안 하고 통대야. 대하다 뭐기 마하kum보멜라 처배 거두리야. 다 로중이 중이 더 초고야래. nga chakashel dewe chene wa mige de zane dindoga mudigbo ani mudigbo nganjang ta sa nganjang sa orwa dinde bet jibu ta domre zame mebe cheje ta dizute monguji himalaya ani kang chöl bet jibu ran chene ta lone lotene degi yudoji 근데 식도가 내니 신일로 이메 엔 마고모 메라 직소리 저도 나게 당소 아니 안 줘야체 그 쇼는 넘주도네 넘주되라 디니 넘시리 오모 조세 안 좀 도를 못하시 내지도 저어르디 그게 한다 모티브 나고 지 강조를 땡게데 카시가 토고요스 디 처리치라시스 그래서 랭꾸리 저 그런 수지 도면이면 그듯이 찍도가 실로 끝내줘 그듯이 찍도가 뒤에 나 구두셔가 삼찬주 아무가 넘주니 로마토래 안 로마토다 자 뒤에 인디 뒤 두모르셔 자다 개발지 다음에 따와 디드 제셔버지 그 턴에 다 산제베 상하를 예와쳐야지 다도 다와도 되니 무직베 에네 상하세네 도스치야 마도 지금 저런 특별히 냠는 자유도가 배지 두모르샤.
Then next is the Vajrayana tradition. So in addition to Mahayana tradition, there is in the Buddhist tradition, there is the Vajrayana tradition, which again takes the tantric teachings as important scriptural sources. Of course, historically in India, there were also questions raised about the authenticity of the Vajrayana teachings. And even today, there are modern scholars who dispute whether there is such a thing called Buddhist Tantra. And this is, this has been the case in the past, but also some modern scholars dispute whether there is anything called Buddhist Tantra, or whether Buddhist Tantra should be understood as some kind of mixture coming from the Hindu influence. However, if you look at the practices, of course, there are a lot of common practices. I have met with Hindu practitioners, and there is a Hindu Tantra. And among the Hindu tantric practices, we see a lot of common practices, such as the practice that has to do with regulation of the wind energy, prana yoga, also visualization of the chakras at different points of the body, and also controlling of the energy that flows within it, and the vital drops like bindus and so on, and also the inner heat practice, the tumo practice, and holding the breath practice. These are practices that are found in the Hindu tantras as well. I have had discussions with
Tumo, Chandalini.
No, Chandalini. Chandalini, that's
Kundalini, Chandalini.
So that's the inner heat, tumo practice. So we find these in both Buddhist tantric practices as well as the Hindu tantric practices. And I've had discussions with Hindu practitioners themselves, and I've met with some of them. For example, every 12 years there is a major celebration that takes place on the shores of the river Ganges called Mahakumbh Mela, the Great Kumbh Mela, every 12 years. And at this great gathering, you see ascetics, many Hindu ascetics, some of who are completely naked and who live in high altitude places like the Himalayan mountain region, totally naked in an ascetic practice. So they clearly have tumo type of practices. And in fact, about 2 years ago, there was going to be a major Mahakumbh Mela, and I was invited and I was keen to go. And in fact, I made the request that if organizers could arrange for me to have some discussion with some of these ascetics from the Himalayan region, I would like to discuss with them what their practices are. Unfortunately, when the time came to go, because of bad weather, the flight couldn't take off, so I wasn't able to meet with them. So the point is that, when you look at the specific techniques that involve utilization of the body and energy, such as the chakras and so on, there's very little to differentiate between the Buddhist Tantra and the Hindu Tantra. Now, then how do we distinguish between the two is really on the basis of whether this entire practice is grounded in the wisdom of no self. That is what distinguishes Buddhist Tantra from a non-Buddhist Tantra. The non-Buddhist Tantra is grounded upon the fundamental view of understanding of nature of reality that assumes some kind of eternal principle called Atman or self, whereas the Buddhist approach is grounded in the complete opposite of that view, where there is a rejection of any kind of permanent eternal principle called self. So it's a no-self view-based Tantra, and it is on that basis one can distinguish between Buddhist Tantra and Hindu Tantra, or non-Buddhist Tantra.
One time I saw one Thangpa, one sort of the form of deity and the chakras. And the Sangho kada Lai Chigda kada Kasurwe Toguche and the any Jew Dejinicolo, Jubolon Jicolo, Ningachuicolo, Dawatu, Sanitayon Colosa, Zandu Tadado. The entire subject to stand a page the Mudival Hadisha. That would the text Kasur, page the Meza, a Tato Tower the Jayana, Dagme Tower the Jayana, Sham at the page called Meza Shimarba. The Shem or Daganda, Chizango the Jeche, Sosum Kolongam, Kolotusa, Tatato.
I also once saw a scroll, a Thangpa painting, which looking at the actual art form, it really seemed to be more of a non-Buddhist tantric depiction. But if you look at the chakra, depiction of the chakra, the energy channel centers at the crown, at your mid-brows, at your throat, heart, navel, and the secret organ, these descriptions are very similar to the ones that we find in the Buddhist text. Of course, unless we know the actual text or manual for practice that goes with that particular Thangpa, we wouldn't know whether that is a Buddhist practice or not.
Oh yeah. I'm going to condition 무지가 상하다 산제비 상하 콜라모는 저다랑 송게 디프게 nga 장야 여바다 지기 중국 시소비 다 진시자다 중국들한테 태탄에 야치도 말이스 다 다음에 뵙다와 시작이면 뒤탄에 야치오레스 콜라모는 제가 송수.
In fact, I asked this very question about how to be distinguished between Buddhist Tantra and non-Buddhist Tantra to Kunu Lama Rinpoche many years ago, and Kunu Lama Rinpoche told me that you cannot make the distinctions based on observance of the actual rituals themselves. In both tantras you see recitation of mantras. In both tantras you see practices that has to do with energy channels and so on. But it is on the basis of recognizing and understanding whether that tantric practice is grounded in a no self view or a self-based view. One can make the distinction.
다 별이야 아니 데 칸로 쳐서 들어 개변하러 칸로 쳐서 단좀니 어다이니 켄지 쉬워서 아니 두번쯤 그래 시탐제 이번에 데벨로기 다 동규 증액이 두번쯤 쳐버리 아니 가서 보게다 벤 떠주 다 베시라 캐바치모 코나랑기 아니 nenzochebe umorangjuba senebe dumda yambechi mixi surkurubchigi 아니 공기다 설때도와 저 날린데 개바 침부치러 봐 진짜 좀더 랑강 수구지 심매지 할레베다 개바다 년라여대와 따라와 또 공도원즈 침부래 다 로변을 붙이 나장체 아니 간다 리부티슈 저가 소르셴이 시차 도스셴이 별이야다 러중 문미기 때다 과거 장르 대사지 니지 중샤 이 별마다 자가 과거 장르 때 예외께 주는 면도가 이 주진즈 녀는 날렌다로 소파 지기 아니 샤트시 못스 나로리아 롬니나 데네다 야 지금 상하다 냠시야 또 토우드 페베크도래 아니 리고 뒤슈 잡아라 쉬어야 되는데 용기야래 근데 계속 쉬어만도 나고서야 처대야 되는지 과거 장르 되는지 여말에 자가를 여서 말해 저다들이 인도 과거 장르 되도 배질 별 이제 마다 하루 아유 사버지 들이 소시도 나 천된지 중나다 야고를 봐. 또 천대 뭐 중심 에네 사실 누구군이 송어를 누구군이 송어리 짬민스미 대주체 에네 세시모 가랭의 책이 있어 송셔줘래 러중체니 서모에 맨댕에 야 겨우미나라 진지지순지에 맨댕에 책이 디 바슬라스리자 인데제 갈라카고 책 써야 돼 누구군이 이미다 늦어 알았어 송여래 디 담바레샤 저렇게서 이네 제 뭐시 다 러중 다초로 장네 샴리 중에 된데 용도가 아니 타고를 지금 난산 인도도 제제 삼지 중에들 몽고 용도가 자 드스체디 아마도 디주 거래 한다 로디아나 유니버시티나 직나 아더 프로페서 조시 사주 다 공샤사래 공부 대비치샤 야가로 산지기 추 냠자로야기 두숨셰도가 규직디 긴드부츠 아니 교로 당도체 아니 결혼 도와서 뭐배 세먼 그 다고들 차체 다 미비어 표그러다 애니 결혼기 디베 자라냐 다고죠 결혼 처음에 그돌이야 결혼 샤 나로라 지금 세세 무시들을 먹고 대하는데 차니 애니 간다 러중기 교로 가고체니 진짜가 다네 미망 처리야 아니 타바타나 라르야지 규진직디시 규진직디 아니 상아 체줄 신체 디터네야 망속에 매바 대면이 찍라 gen직체 다 gen숨버디 아니 유지제보 지야 낭셔 토나시다 토나드 마냠 아니 무디괴 직든들이 한번 토나르네 어떤 얘기다 지 유진 숨부터네 아니 야 낭바 낭셔 냠야게 아니 언제든지 충분히 했으니 거기를 지셔 자다 드셔야지 나란조에 뼈 타고 마셔신 지금 저도 중에 다초로장 아니 저거 건주만 주체 치매이나 다 템벌 샴디 주지 서울라 템베 샴증기야래 템벌 누베겐 주야래 다가는 신기는 나바 인생에 지금 왜 상하 냠리 지기스네 저거 체주 치매이나 왔다디 산지가 되면 냠야게 그 된지 두고도가 소소면 최면은 소소랑와래 내 가르치는 책임도 아니 최 산재배 최치유 생집에 있나 도당아 진로당자래 딘는 신체는 저거를 마도 지금 소소배 지금 시부시 도토로 인도도 제제 건주모 주잖아 야고천이야 말에 나무한테 나른 자리야 내대 최종 담아발라 내대 최종 나른자리 시베 그돌이야 이는 야 상하게 냠시베 또 토불이야 페베 그돌이야 아니 깨덕 아니 다음에 한번 정아 이미 어디서 제디 직벽에 응어서 그 공기 결론기 지가나다 지가나리야 아니 벤 좀더부터 지기 좋은 거래 아니 나렌데 취tim버 도스 치루 고향 도스 페베 그돌이야 아니 내대 초중 수세 질분나리야 분미기 게시해야지 산체 아니야 시주자네 디나리야 아니 하모들에게 여대버지 시브리 아니 공기 내대 초중 나렌데 기도네 비브리네 아니 쇼 공다 그리고 뒤슈고 잡아라 시네 아니 주진 들어봐 잡았다 사드도와 사드즈데리 그 개념으로샤 루루르니 나른들 슈베 그돌이야 지기 동구동야로 니에버든지 지기 가서로 보게 겐지 아니 처지 그도데 유대 유리야 무기중 아니 로병기 신주구지 아니 세스는 장설이야 신주구지 장설도 되는 데가 전에 긴디고 초와 주야르시 데가 루지지 하다 이제 거야지 하래 아니 쇼고 야 루주 나 나는 저 흉지고 말해 사실 덤베게지지 하래다 자 들이도 먼저 전에게 취tim 탐부시라에 다도가 지상가라서 저기 야들을 해양 신신 야우천이야 말해 들께서 자나나도와 뭐 때문에 조거든 제가 시기 변화마 지금 라마 인스 배 최지기하고 인스잖니 배 근데 용기 있어 아니 슈고 최지기하고 가르고 가서는 김행고도스 배우고도스 어디 지금도스 근데 지금도 로지가 다른 사람 야나네 나고치 시토가래죠 다들 나무 도요로 다 나고치가 도시거든 저 나고치 가서 다 등산 아니 변에마 최지게 인생에게 라마들이 용도스 아니 재미 낭출 대바신 저에게 대바로 시작해 간sam선에 라마 거야디 비미다 주차라고도스 어다 드르데 켜내 야고면도 아니 내지 탑시 싫어지스 곡도 싫어지사 나 자갈 때죠 이게 곡도 개체도 말했어 곡도 가르쳐 버렸다면 켜라면서 결이 낭배처럼 도나치네 되니 여버스 너도 걔는 나라라 라메 체니 숨버디 냐르 찬스 랍다스 신이 두 시워 녀시워 연달하고 전체 룽구축 셔서 소원다 신기 최 주된시고 요아래 어다 변해마 지금 라마 인생에 최지 대원생을 옆에 거돌라 신이 그 체니 최 주도 선거도 없는데 뒤딱셔체 뒤선거면은 라면도 시하고 말했어 게스라치 돌링라치 신 아니 라면도 시한 최슈려 말했어 이랬어요 저도 도시주로 말하신 답시 네 답시 작가가 요마다스더니 서든지 인도 다대가라서 미킨도 버셔 미켜서 먹고 싶도 아니 사물로 다 가서 보게 섭섭해야 돼 캐셔버리셔 러비잉잉기 뭐뭐 저기 쇼그때 아니 대저 투버다게 담반이光芒 소신자다 주문은 또던 데도 주주진네 타번데가 파유 기세네 러저 송도가 다 다르게서 리스크도데 말아서 섭섭해 나오가도 백해치 버리셔 시험 벌거든지 아메리카 나도와도 유로 나도와래 되게 지금 선주들나 통용도가 지금 라마된데기 큰 중원 주체니 야오민도 선데 영대기도가 춤을 되는 영대기도가 또 소소샤 제거하래죠 소소 개게 뭐 맞잖아요 땀바질 상담하는데 백해심을
So in Tibet, as Buddhism came to Tibet, and particularly in the 8th century when it became really established, there were three main figures that played a very important role in the establishment of the Buddha Dharma in Tibet. They were known as the trio, the king, the master or the abbot, and Lobun, the tantric master, and the king. And the abbot, it refers to Shantarakshita, who was a great Indian monastic disciplinary master. He was also a philosopher in his own right. In fact, historians recognize him as a founder of a very unique, specific Buddhist philosophical school known as Yogacara Madhyamaka Svatrantika school. And Shantarakshita is also recognized within India as a great philosopher whose works are studied even to this day. And Shantarakshita was also an embodiment of the great monastic discipline. So he was one important person. And the second person was Padmasambhava, who was a tantric master, who was not a monastic teacher, but a tantric teacher. And Padmasambhava, had the appearance and the kind of form of a tantric practitioner, not a upholder of the Vinaya monastic discipline. And because of the role these two great masters played, uniquely in Tibet, they evolved two communities. One is the monastic community of red-robed monks. The other one is known as the community of tantric practitioners with white robes. And this seems to be quite unique. I don't think that kind of dual communities of religious practitioners formally evolved in India. For example, if you look at the Indian tradition, although Vajrayana was very deeply rooted in India, but if you look at the way in which Vajrayana flourished in India, many of them were actually monastic members, and who eventually, when their own tantric realization became very advanced, that they need to evolve outside the monastic community, then they went on their own. And, so it was more of an individual path. There was no formalized organization or community of tantric practitioners. But in Tibet, there was this historically two different religious practitioners community emerged. And I think it is, if the members of these communities really take their responsibilities seriously and maintain the discipline well, I think this is wonderful to have these kind of two different types of community of practitioners within the tradition. However, I think it is important that, sometimes when there is a separate community of tantric practitioners who are not monks, monastic members, there is also the danger of taking that kind of tantric perspective to the point where they adopt kind of lifestyle which may be contrary to the mainstream Buddhist ethos. I remember many years ago, I met an Indian professor who had written a book, and a professor by the name of Mr. Joshi. He wrote a book in which he identified three main reasons or conditions that led to the disappearance of Buddhism eventually in India. And one of them was, he identified as the corruption of the monastic community, how over time monastic community and its members started to become corrupted by wealth. And there were situations or cases where when a senior monk passed away, this monk had lots of gold and lots of wealth. So it seems that some members of the monastic community started accumulating wealth, and they became very attached to wealth. And that gradually undermined the lay people's, devotees' kind of admiration and respect for them. The other condition that he identified,
lay people's or the public,
the general public's respect for the monastic community was undermined. The second condition, or the reason that he identified, was excessive display of forms of behavior that were quite contrary to the conventional norms of decency in the name of tantric practice. And that kind of abusive, outrageous behavior in the name, under the license of tantric practices, again started to undermine the public's kind of respect and faith in the Buddhist institutions and the communities. And the third, and then the third condition, the reason that he identified, was that over time, the rulers of the different kingdoms, the kings, they began to lose interest in supporting the Buddhist community and the Buddhist institutions. So those were the three main conditions that this historian identified. And therefore, those of us who have chosen to lead a monastic life, and His Holiness was talking about the presence of so many monastic members on the stage here, it is very important to appreciate the responsibility that we have, not just as individual practitioners, but also responsibility to the service and continuation of the Buddha Dharma. Several years ago, a Chinese Buddhist from mainland China came to see me in Dharamsala, and he told me that, he said, these days, a lot of Tibetan Lamas are coming to mainland China, and some of them are carrying titles like Dharma Raja, King of Dharma, and they are attracting a lot of students, but few of them, or some of them, it seems over time, once they have gathered devotees and so on, actually what they are interested in are really women and wealth. And then that really causes a lot of distrust and disappointment on the part of the devotees. So this Chinese person asked me if I could do something to prevent this and kind of And I told him that, I live in India, what can I do? I really cannot do anything. But the best thing that you could do is the Chinese devotees who are, kind of deep devotees of Buddhism and the Dharma. You should familiarize yourself with the qualities of the teacher that are listed in the text, such as by Maitreya's ornament of Mahayana scriptures. The text identifies 10 main qualities that should be present in a teacher, a spiritual teacher, a guru. And these include being disciplined, having integrity, and compassion, kindness for the students, and so on. So I told him that the devotees themselves should really familiarize with the key qualities that are recommended for a guru and try to see if the person who is claiming to be a teacher, possesses these qualities or not. And if they don't, you can attend their lectures and classes in the form of discussion and lecture, but don't take them as your personal guru. And that way, at least you can have some kind of check against the potential abuse on the part of the teacher. And in the West too, in North America as well as in Europe, we have in the past heard stories of abuses on the part of the teachers of their students, scandals and so on. So these are something that the monastic members, as well as those who, adopt the position of being a Dharma teacher, should really take seriously that responsibility and be careful that even if you don't have a sense of shame, you should have at least some kind of concern for the survival and continuation of the Dharma, the well-being of the Dharma. And that should act as a restraint against your potentially abusive behavior as well. This is something that I think is really important that I wanted to emphasize. Sorry, Isolent was saying that, for example, if you look at the history, one of the great masters in Nalanda was Dharmapala, who was a great teacher, and eventually Dharmapala also became a great Vajrayana master, a tantric teacher, and part of his realization involved engaging in practices that had kind of an invitation of dakinis, goddesses, and the monastic disciplinarian one day walking around heard women talking in Dharmapala's room, and then he was reprimanded, and eventually Dharmapala, even the great master, was kicked out of the monastery. So that shows the commitment on the part of the monastic institution to really upholding the integrity of the discipline that is really demanded on the part of the monks.
Oh yeah. That's it. So that's our sangha ki shun ma yawo the sanje ve da sangha ti ma yawo to step in na ta sangha shun na la nya la ji zolun ti sa zhe zai de nya la yang ya ge gomya ge shiru ko tai nan zhuo de gu ge yo da tai nan zhuo gom dan de du ni do ge song nem 삽샤와시 국도가. 그래서 우승 거룩이 최지 담에베 따외 고하다 지금 용서로 각게 맹해지기 원하잖아. 터국공약 시작하고 그래. 뒤지시게 다 지금 가서 그게 난저 사고민도 전에 내가 돈이 건네. almost much to almost much to hang saro almost showing the no small ma ko hang sa le sha ge chita ya timene da da hai de konani any chen 동이 고 벽에 치기도 하는 동이 고면 전에 간다 동이 고마다 만지에 타이는 저 자연의 여마다 서들이 이전에 동이 그 따와 실샤를 타라 아니 타이는 조금 그도가 동이도 속는 동이도 속는 시즌에 동이도 로티니 랑게 명올라 아니 타구리야 샤대버지기 공국도가 자 동이도 왜 따와서 동이 따와 직냐라 지 템별 과를 자 지금 매나 아니 탁 사이는 저 천대용야 요 말이 다 낭자릭 숨세네 제 가나 아니 파이 남을다야 아니 진입에 자 아니 상 가서 된가 자라 다야 똑바상에 가르샤리네 간다이네 제 예식을 전시로 드리직 상담지 영어야 냐라 다야 코하시면은 야미도가 대담적으로 단동 규모도 시에 타네 이 상담지를 봐 살려나고 메도가 저한테 들으셔 자 다진이 인도전에 다 천대 중은 상하게 람게 아니 지 변은 띵인줄 주야라 누버직도가 변한다 저유기 지금 매내지 삼대 자내지 삼대 자자 타버되면 삼대 세네 드스도네 그런 투모인 것이도가 애는가 라멜이야 집에 있는 저런 특리냐면 디디 야고 shum이나 rakpa luburwe semgi tungni 깨바네 깨바 공부할래 차와 육매 시에 유즘시 tungni 공부디 네버차게 또 서비스하래 간다 저니기나네 시디 봉야라 육모 루burwe sem디 파 가네 말에 루burwe sem디 파 가네 육매 시에 tungni 도베 따와 가서다 육매시와 돈이도 따와를 끼에 딘데게 돈이도 로티 코네 시르군이 보죠 봐도 시 로라고 돈이 건배 로티기 시르군이 보셔도 겁니다. 다 야고스 로준샤나다 14호 때에 있나 그 투모인 뭐지요 하래 투모인 뭐 대한고 투모인 뭐 천대죠 알라 멍시디디 야고스 잔적고도 나도 별이야 거봐 먹고 싶어요. 일단 주면 거봐도 지금 저중 거봐도 다 망샤게 초간 되나 망샤게 왔다. 나도 라다가 저도 리거로다. 대한다. 내 멋있는데. 안데 이미 슝글 내주든지. 아니 뭐지간도 칼라를 세서 거거지 되더래. 아니 산지에 쳐셔야 돼. 아니 야나 주변냠는 거 타네 산지에 담번 주변에서 쳐와래 야나 셰베 타네 아니 담번 주변에서 쳐와래스 세네 디도스 다섯 개서 막아서 저러면 이렇게 시야지 안게들 넣으래 아니 아다 내가 저거 아다 라다 다 범블 treasury 어디기 아니 라다 거 봐서 셰바에 요마리스 주에 요마리스 등등등등등 사도도 요마리스 들라다 주고 말해 가서 별이네 다 지금도 그 고모 먹고 사요래 지 초간대에 참으로 초간대게 하래 딱 뭐서 초간대야 뒤에 탄탁한데 근데 꼼거래 매봐 로저 맞는 신말 왔다 너무 책감 보지만 심 겨자체 아니 니다 세제 다디 단다 심사하고 좀 마시나 근데 저렇게 하는 거다 디 준주 나리야 아니 디 도당나기 리미샤세 템퍼레처다 지금 저거르시다 순간으로시다 그게 뭐다 그 또저도 무슨네 저구야 그사 내가 소리 차는 뱀도 사들이 인도 당연히 유디 셰다 지금 유버시티 소시 셰되기가 지금 그게 연속이래 지금 되게 단단하잖아 다 소소소 아니 거든 게 어렵다 사들이 인도고 칼라요 뭐는 로로 산창스는 그냥 가시 암조리하다 칼에 겨울식이 배 독스시다 셰딩섬들 챙겨도 되는다 뭐는 내서 야구시 맞잖아 좀더 봐 어디를 사와들이 인도 뒤안에 다 산재에 쳐서야 돼 대바치고 그러면도 되게 너무 봐 롱도 장이 받다기 그게 상단 배로 차잖아 다스 산재에 쳐기 사고도 다 택신기 다 슝기 만주 그게 지금 자로 카드 자서 가르쳤나 랑진진 때다 담버 된주도 짐베 된진이 우때 딱한 저 잡어 대라 갑자기 자야 돼 된진 매버 규르직 랑진진 매버 규르직세니 말람 접대하지 된지 그만 매버 쳐 그래 랑진진 매버 쳐 말아 랑진진 매버 차버려야 준주 더비나네 숙제베 간다 랑진진 께 양양 싸운다 곧 두 번에 싸운다 집을 채 공부를 채우는데 애는 랑진지 슈숑도 다시 있거든 간다 랑진진기 견상을 오고 전발을 땡채 다 도우선 애는 랑진지도 슈숑다 다가는 신기 댄지 그 댄지기 지도 소원은 시 유중업에 내설래 담발 줄때버지다 모니 줄때버지 예배 얘나 견 디어 사디지 담에 줍식 줍고 나 지주제지 고 몽구진에 싸운다 양양 싸운다 런에 로트는 싸운다 봐이나 애니 댄지 갈래 슈숑 도돼야지 거다 당에 돈이 또 여도 씁니다 가다 돈이 또도 치고다 질러도 그러지 사실은 이르사대 즉 딴데 상도라고 요다 쉬우지도 다로 디지털 굴데 되어래 하람다 로축수 상담을 로축주래 축수시다 상담을 지나다 딴데 요도 sem리한 요 딴데 도되기도 란진지래 요 도되기도 디무텐지 요 도되기도 디무텐지 요 침배 땡기 패질 대변 대차 된대기 녀몽 그리디 시라가 나바진게 람 검니 대변 녀몽 슈슈 시밖에 말이 똥이 검에 땡기 대변 녀몽아 패질 문주 건너베 소리지 패질 연구도 와 뭐는 전에게 누워야 돼 버리셔 이제 싸운다나 그 싸운다네 요도 여러마다 저시에서는 말람 접도 비치고기 조금도 가 사다가 말람자 개쳐버리면 대바시라 개쳐버려 대바 들리고 이제 싸워대 소원은 시 대바 개쳐버려 이제 대바 찍고 된다고요 말이 저도 남자기 싫어도 배주체 그렇다네 아니 랑진지다 댄지를 카드지 않아야지 뜻도 가 빼개쳐버려 대한 나도로시는 게 쉬고 말이 배주체나 뭐는 전에 요태야 도우시는 게 쉬워래
So we spoke about the main features of the Buddhist Tantra, and also one thing that I want to explain to you is that when it comes to actual practice of the Tantra, if you look at the actual sadhana practice, there is, it presupposes that you have some understanding and experience of emptiness, because almost all the sadhana practices begin with meditation on emptiness on the basis of using a Sanskrit phrase like Om Svabhava Shuddha Sarva Dharma or Shunyata and even a Tibetan phrase, but it presupposes that you are able to kind of meditate on emptiness and then use that as the basis. And in fact, the foundation of many of the Vajrayana practice is the deity yoga, and the deity yoga involves reflecting upon emptiness and then imagining that very mind realizing emptiness as arising in the form of the deity of your meditation. So it is the realization of emptiness that is being imagined as arising as deity. So what it presupposes is to have at least some understanding of the teaching on emptiness and also some kind of emotional connection, kind of an affinity with the teaching on emptiness. Without these two, there isn't even the basis for doing this deity yoga practice. And then similarly, one of the important practices of the Vajrayana is to be able to adopt a kind of an attitude, a way of being, where you perceive everything that you see as manifestations of the deity, meditation deity, all sounds as reflections of the mantra, and all your thoughts and emotions as arising of wisdom. Now, those three things again, unless you have some understanding of emptiness, some realization of the truth of emptiness, there isn't the basis for those kind of cultivation. So what is required is, deeper understanding of emptiness as the foundation for doing Vajrayana tantric practice. And also one uniqueness of the Vajrayana practice is the sophistication and the richness that we find in the actual meditation techniques in the specific types of practice. And particularly in the highest yoga tantra, there is the possibility of utilizing your subtle consciousness, subtle mind, not just ordinary mind of thoughts and concepts, or the intellect, but even the very subtle mind as a way of turning into the path and realizing emptiness on that basis. And it is said that, understanding of emptiness that takes place at the gross level of mind, of intellect, and if you compare that to the realization of emptiness at the subtle level of consciousness, the latter one is far more powerful in terms of dealing with afflictions and all the negative emotions and so on. So this is where the uniqueness and the special characteristic and the richness of Vajrayana comes into the picture, and also the final antidote for eliminating all the subtle obscurations to knowledge can only be effected if we can bring the realization of emptiness at this very fundamental, subtle level of consciousness, not at the gross level of mind. And that can only, that is only possible if you are able to cultivate the Vajrayana path. So this is something that I think, so one's understanding of the Vajrayana must be really grounded in this kind of understanding. So therefore, the point is that without the foundational knowledge of the Buddha's teaching, without some experience of the foundational teachings like no self, impermanence, and particularly the teaching on emptiness, there isn't any basis for building the Vajrayana tantric path. So I think it's important to recognize this, because otherwise sometimes Vajrayana practices become kind of a form of a ritual. In Tibet we have many monasteries, and in many of these monasteries the monks simply do rituals. And in fact, I remember once in Ladakh, which is a place I visit quite often, one day we were having lunch with some government officials, some of them I know very well, and in the conversation I spoke about the fact that according to Buddhism, there are two ways of upholding the Dharma. One is to uphold the Dharma by teaching and studying. This is one way of upholding the Dharma. The second way of upholding the Dharma is to make Dharma real through one's own practice and realization. And so then this government official, who was a friend, told me that actually, to be frank, there are many monasteries in Ladakh where neither of these two are done. The only thing the monks do is beat drums and chant and do rituals. So, and this is true in Tibet as well. We have many monasteries in Tibet where the monks only learn how to chant and do the rituals and beat the drums. So I think it is important to remember, what is the essence and the significance of these teachings, and what is the essence of the actual practice. It may seem like some of you might feel that the Dalai Lama is always complaining about things. My approach is to be frank. If there are flaws and shortcomings in the tradition and the system, it's better to be upfront and explicit and acknowledge them rather than pretending everything is okay, because pretension is a form of self-deception. So I think it is important to know this. And also I want to share with you that if you take the practice seriously, if you take the teaching seriously and implement it into your life, there is a real power in the practice. For example, for us Buddhist practitioners, we have two principal enemies. One is the self-cherishing, excessive self-cherishing thought and attitude. The other one is the grasping at of self-existence. So those are the two enemies. Now, how do we overcome them? How do we deal with them? It's not enough simply to close your eyes and make the wish and pray. May these self-cherishing attitude and may self-grasping disappear. It's not going to go away by simply making the prayer and aspiring for it. What needs to be done is to really understand how they manifest, where they are rooted, what are their antidotes. And the antidote to self-cherishing is very well, well explained in texts like Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, Bodhicharya Avatara, where there is an extensive explanation of how to tackle our deep-rooted self-cherishing attitudes and so on. And similarly, and this is something that knowledge alone is not enough. First of all, you have to reflect deeply and from many different angles. Then secondly, you have to reflect again and again and again and again. And thirdly, you have to reflect it over a prolonged period of time. So it's from many different perspectives, over and over again, over a long period of time. And through the combination of that, then you begin to see a real impact. Similarly, when it comes to dealing with self-grasping, again, reflecting deeply from all sorts of ways on the teaching on emptiness, then meditating and contemplating this again and again and over a long period of time, then you really begin to see a change. I'm not claiming that I've realized emptiness, but I can assure you that I'm kind of almost there. And this is not to really boast, but to really make the point that if you make an effort, there really is an impact and a power. In my case, now it's been about 60 years since I started taking these practices seriously. And I can assure you that the power of practice and understanding of the teaching is really tremendous. For example, the way in which they impact my emotional, kind of life, the way in which they impact the emotional reactivity, kind of dampening of predisposition towards anger, strong emotions, negative emotions, and so on. It's the power of practice is really felt in those kind of areas. So the point I want to make is that, it is only through understanding and practicing over time that you can begin to see a real transformation.
Oh yeah.
So therefore, faith alone is not enough. Of course, as practicing Buddhists, faith in the Dharma is very important. There is a scriptural quotation which says that the faith is the foundation of all good qualities. But faith alone is not enough. The faith needs to be grounded and accompanied with an ability to use your intelligence to understand the Dharma and then make it real in your practice.
Oh yeah. So Buddhism in general, particularly Nalanda tradition, we have to utilize our intelligence maximum way. Through that way, transform our emotion. That's the way. So knowledge, very important. In order to gain knowledge, study, very, very important. Now, for example, my own case, now, as I mentioned earlier, now I am quite old person. So now time come, relax. But still, I consider myself as a student. Whenever some time there, I always read and think. I always. And every day, each day, about 5 hours, some meditation. Mainly analytical meditation. Thinking, analyze, thinking. Really very, very helpful. So Tibetan Buddhist tradition is usually I call Nalanda tradition. Nalanda tradition is Nalanda da kanda gibayins chene ngati shati 내가 지기 가렸었나? 되게 처직을 다들 뭐에 내주리 별 강생이 좋은다 땜방가다 고쳐야 돼 kenshi 쉬워져네 kenshi 쉬워져 되게 시험하다 보는 식이 날린데 뭐냐 전에게 캐베 쑥연 제차돼요 땜바 치달을 차잖아 다 조지 디디 차다 디디 가나 밀가마를 실에 공 커두데 밀가마를 실에 쉬어야지 있는 날린데 취균생에 차돼요 자들이 인도 뭐에 내주디에 날린데 취규지 자들이 이르 전에 별에는 쳐야 라마이즘을 사서를 드셔야되기도 와. 그 말이 있을 뭐는 저는 날린데 취규 디차디스 집이 배배 지금 로종치다 디르마 도시 야오스 때문에 먼저 슝다야 디디 잠시 때마다 지금 저 출로서 와. 아니 참매슝 아니 뭐고 애는 도원 도자와로서 봐. 뒤에 사모로 나는데 캐를 자셔 비슷하래도. 저한테 인도 전에 뭐냐 전에 쿵쭈버치 차지 델레이 계속 통기. 저 나는데 주요 인사되게. 아니 계산이버디 별 사자 거기 닝뭐 겐데 엔다 아니 전화 듣자봐. 지금 3월로 그 사회 콩독서디 날린데 주기돼 자도가. 변은 순시 조금 사샤나 사자 거기 닝뭐 겐데 지금 3월로 다야 배셔로 순시 조금. 어디는 배지 직들이 영어요. 근데 배기해 잡으마다 시 간다 야가좀 대충스타래도. 사들이 인도산에 디셔에 있는 애네 나도 샤스모인 나도 샤마보인 나도 샤나보인사 이렇게 시작해서 샤스케마 또 싸워 콩디가 치보이나 그래서 디드드니 그래서 디드인도니 나도 사모로 투든 침사용하래 캐시도가 나도 사모로 루루고 젠자 토메게 젠자 시다샤도 두스가 치보이나 애는 나도 배우게 한다 능규한다 자신주의 사무도주 냠네 칠럽주사지기 기보숨지 누지 송되게 알아. 제가 다스디 덮어준 거래. 데 냠네 칠럽주시네 자신주의다 사무도주를 하가지기 냠네 칠럽주 야 말해. 안 된게 되게 시험하다 보는지 정주급 냠네 테러 숨두잖아 자신주의래. 똥이 있다고 냠네 테러 숨두잖아 사무도주래. 다 표기한다 년근 송로보다 드주제기 지금 송당시도가 땜바 지zen 강사 거전 사지 자신주의다 사무도주의 땜바 지zen이 냠리 친로 주사데 나도 전에 용도 싫어서 나 변은 가서 넘겨한다 변은 넘림기 소신도 쓰더라 자신주의다 사무도주의 도즈 보면 것도가 냠리 친로 주로 주시면 것도가 그 냠는 신도 주디 상아르샤 강사 거전에 상아서야데 당고 도시상 수백 그들에 강사 제대로를 싸다 롱다 감다 딘지의 뒨니 송셔지 차도 그래서 강사 거전에도 юм진지 두숨다고 담바 지선신 송셔지 그래서 좀 전에 담에 두셔 원두도 원는데 년도 리전 라사지 리전 전주습의 리전 택신 리전 센터 들도 소나 해봐요 아래 지금부터 안에 답지선도 지사들이 인도 시행하서 하다를 민간부지를 치부이나 가셔게 다 자신주의 지 다서도야를 그랬어 and first 사무대주 다지 다서도야를 그랬어 다 동어도 배냥이 틱틱틱 냥이 신럽주의가 그랬어 ene Mahayana Tradition, ene Ngarushta, ene Divajrayana Tradition, ene Thunderbird, Thunderbird, Buddha, ene Chamja Sutra. That is the 냠네 친구들도 이백이서 가고 있었다. 시라 가고. 사실은 인도산에 뒤여도 세배나 대신 주기도 사무도 이래 대바 지진듯이 다 디디 멍시 예바 타라 아니 하연나죠 규지치라고 지기 제수장네 아니 주진치라고 지기 짜샤베 배는 대저로이나 루이보이네리 야 나보보이네리 야 가사디 지부보이네리 다 도신로야로다 자 독스리샤 자도 가다 어쨌든 대인들자네 아주 별 강생의 종게 산계의 최도 콩주뭐 날렌지 기발했어야 돼. 디 콩주뭐 직대. 아니 가서 사기건이 디디에 아니 기록을 지기 님을이야 닝적하게 써야 하지. 아니 님을 지기 기록을 습득하게 써야 돼 서로 진짜 뭐가 잖다. 나 상월로 아니 순시 주성 야오 때. 아니 또 선을 러버스 뭐냐면 야오 저 집에는 상월로 직주 자 되기도 와. 자디 다디 상월로 주 지가 소리. 신 규지면 자지. 배사제 버기나 남제 조 제도를 된도 돼야지. 아니 님은 다 마어노 어디선다 한다 대보를 먹고 다 초가들 셔이나 지 주어까지로서 왔다 뒤난게 있는 불보다 던진다 지금 뒤지셔니 아니 이좀 맨다맨다 내고도 거주샤샤나 아니 방모 당하는 신경이네 콜로동바 아니 깨도 뒤지는 로데도 서도신들자네 기록샤샤나다 대상적성 조시다 다 길이 맨다맨다 차소 낭세데 다 맨다맨다 연구를 봐 서다 담바 지진기 간다 배날린데 다 슝디를 가는 집에는 아주 사모로 도전 침사 아니 뭐냐라 아주 사모로 취규 찍어 있는데 지금 두시께 있잖아요 도전 침사 용대 그러 이 개좀 샤도 돼 되게다 좀제 그 판단이 돼서 통도 상에 따와 드셔야 되고 날린데 취규 아주 날린데 취규 있어야 셔야 돼
So one of the things that I wanted to share with you is that some of you might have noticed that I often describe the Tibetan Buddhist tradition as that of Nalanda tradition, and I see this to be very important because, of course, one is a historical fact. We spoke about the role of Shantarakshita in the 8th century in the establishment of Buddha Dharma in Tibet. The historians speak of two main phases of coming of Buddhism to Tibet. One is known as the early diffusion of Buddhism. The other one is known as the second diffusion of Buddhism into Tibet. In the early diffusion of Buddhism into Tibet, which is the Nyingma tradition, the key Indian master was really Shantarakshita, and Shantarakshita was a great Nalanda master, as I told you before, a great philosopher, highly respected master of the Nalanda school of thought and tradition. And if you look at the second diffusion of the Dharma, one of the main players in that period was Atisha Dipamkara Shirijana, who was, although from Vikramala Shila monastery, but Vikramala Shila monastery was a monastery that upheld the Nalanda tradition. So historically, it is true that the Nalanda tradition is the one that was dominant in the establishment of Buddhism in Tibet. So I think it is important to recognize this. So similarly, if you look at the actual text that the Tibetan monastic institutions study, whether it is the 6 analytic text of Nagarjuna, or the 5 main texts associated with Maitreya, or whether it is the Abhidhamma text of Vasubandhu or Asanga, or whether it is the monastic disciplinary text of Sanskrit tradition. All of these root texts are texts composed by Nalanda masters. So even in our practice, when we study the text, they are all by great Nalanda masters. So it's a historical fact that the Tibetan tradition is really the continuation of the great Nalanda tradition. Another importance I see in emphasizing this common root of the Nalanda tradition is not only to show the authenticity of the tradition, but also to highlight the commonality across all the main Tibetan traditions, whether it is Nyingma, Sakya, Kagyu, or Gelug. If you look at all the text, the main text that these four main schools of Tibetan tradition study, they are again Indian masters. There is a list of 13 great texts, except for one, which was composed by Sakya Pandita, a text on epistemology. All the remaining texts, 12 texts, are all by Indian masters. And these are texts commonly studied in all the monasteries of the four main traditions. And so I think it's important to recognize this. And if we emphasize the Indian roots and the Nalanda roots of the four main schools of Tibetan Buddhism, then there will be a sense of shared heritage, because we are all followers of Nagarjuna, we are all followers of Asanga, we are all followers of the great Indian Nalanda masters, and there will be a sense of shared common heritage, and we can feel a greater harmony across the four main traditions. Because otherwise, if you emphasize the specific rituals and the texts that belong to the different traditions, then of course there are differences. In the Sakya tradition, He Vajra Tantra tends to be the dominant one, which is the basis for the Langri practice. In the Nyingma, there is the 9 vehicles approach, and the Vajrakilaya and those tantric practices tend to be dominant. In Kagyu, there is the Varahi Tantra as well as Chakra Samvara. In the Giluk, there is the Vajrabhairava or Yamantaka, Gohya Samaja, and Chakra Samvara. So you have specific texts and meditation practices that go with them that are unique to the different traditions, but all of them, if we look at the foundational practices in the text, then they are all Indian Nalanda masters. So there's the eight main practices of the Vajrayana, kind of the sadhana, based on Vajrakilaya Tantra in the Nyingma tradition. So you see 8 main practices. So if you emphasize those differences, of course you will see many different practices that are emphasized in different traditions. But if you look at the commonality, then all the 4 traditions are followers of Indian Nalanda tradition. And I think emphasizing that is important, because sometimes what happens is that when you look at the lineage tree depicted on a Thangpa, for example, we speak of a lineage tree, a lineage tradition of the lineage of the profound view, lineage of the vast practices, and lineage of the profound inspirational blessings. And sometimes I have a little doubt about this division into 3, because sometimes people get the impression that of these 3, the lineage of the profound view and the lineage of the vast practices, these are more for monastic scholarship. These are related to philosophical practices and studies and so on. What is important is the lineage of the inspirational tradition, transmission. But if you look at the depiction of the figures in that lineage, in the first 2 lineage, you see many monastic members, and in the 3rd lineage of the inspirational transmission, oral transmission, you tend to see many tantric masters. They are non-monastic members. And sometimes there is the tendency on the part of some people to think that's the most serious one. That is the real practice. And this, I think, is a kind of a misunderstanding, because some Nyingun Sungrab, a Tibetan master, have talked about how to understand texts in their relation to whether or not the teaching that is being presented is from the perspective of the overall Buddhist path, or whether the practice that is presented is very specific perspective of an individual practitioner. If you look at the origin of many of the tantric practices, they tend to be very specific to individuals, based upon their mental disposition. And some of these practices have their origin of an individual yogi who had a vision, and based on that developed a practice. So it is more important to emphasize the commonality, which is really the profound view and the vast practice. And then the Vajrayana practice will be built upon that. So I think, therefore, emphasizing the Nalanda roots of the Tibetan tradition really has two advantages. One is to first of all recognize the Indian roots of our tradition, and the second is to show the commonality that binds together all the four schools of Tibetan tradition, including Chonang, the 5 schools.
Oh yeah. 대 견디도가 편보. 봐. 봐. 저 편승 차샤네. 탱아 낭주마다 공을 편보래. 팬드다 편신 그 가가도가. 전에냐. 안다 편승 편보한다 로주진의 돌아. 아니 최저 송자가 부터 독자샤스도. 그 대세 대대래. 되네 림베기 다 안다 투경 숭용이 편了 아니 최了편제스. 단 누구야는 지 가서 낭쇼 나로리 지기니 영주자다 지 도주자들이 편별해. 편분을 들려대요. 자연고야 주체. 다 편물 자샤네. 나 이게 메리 이게 쳐가라가 자카셔 되버리. 아다 딱새던 전에 오모지고 롱창 그래. 아니 대 가서 청원 남자가 롱창 그래. 가서 집어 차 되거든. 집어를 차 돼. 소소 쳐가다 면라면 잡지. 나 연구를 마도 자와 디디다 집에다 집어를 샤다.
So then, of course, in addition to the 5 main schools of the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, there is also the Bon tradition. Of course, historically, originally, Bon was the pre-Buddhist native religion of Tibet. So at that time, Bon and Buddhism are very different. But ever since Buddhism became established in Tibet, of course, there are distinct rituals that are different. But on the other hand, I have visited the Menri monastery, the main Pompo seat in India, and I've observed the monastic scholars debating. And in their debate, they also use many of the Indian masters' texts, just as the Buddhist monasteries do. And in fact, the 18th century or early 19th century, the great Tuken master talked about how in Tibet, the Bon has been adapted into Buddhism, Buddhist practices, and Buddhist practice has been adapted into Bon practice. So for example, like in the Buddhist rituals that has to do with, enhancement of wealth, good fortune, and so on, that you find in the Buddhist rituals, but they actually originally come from the Bon tradition.
So usually I describe Tibetan Buddhism is complete form of Buddhism. There's a Pali tradition and Sanskrit tradition, including Vajrayana tradition. 다 Thangpa 치중 나도 제가 단도 찍을 냠는샤이 되지.
So the Tibetan tradition can be described as a system in which all the elements of the traditional Buddhist teachings coming from the Pali sources and the Mahayana teachings as well as Vajrayana teachings can be practiced in a single sitting, single session.
Oh yeah. 다 아득이 쉬하기 자신주의다. 다 사무대기 니가로 사계 니가로 다 남창대 요리데 인내다 쪼르데 자신주의기 탑 전주심 또 친주 탑 초티도 쪼송샤시 저들이 이르잖아요. 다 다가는 신경이 사무대기기 동리기다 하되 뭐시 친주들이 요리데 인내 쪼 인내 동리기다 쪼 존든신 송샤지. 다 조진에마 에네 까담가다 기버티기 다 간다 자신주기로 사무대기고 사기기 주 직도만 제대로 소리지 듣지 다 전에 다한테 다 까담을래 에네 까담 슝바와 까담 럼림바 까담 명아바스네 소미고도 세도세데 까담 슝바와디 까담 슝주 아니 계좀 기르다 솜디 대배숑 장사다 도디게 사견이부디 배지 띵징숑이 배요 대내 럽두다 준주디 제배숑 제니 가동 숑주 두스레 자다 가동 숑주 디드마 제제 두스다 체녀체가 아니 사견이 셔연도 자식주주기 배숑 첨부디마 레용도 아니 만도게 레레로 왔다 아니 기라마 레용 그래 다 전에 수스데 가다 럽두 다 준주 랍준이 셔연도잖아 다 루두기 도군에 되었다 아니 직소다 디디 자 레용 인 오만 주버 간다 전주 시숨사디 자시로 오만 주버 쉽게 봐 전주 시숨디 준주 야오지 럽두다 준주 야오지마 샤베이나 디스레고도 서전지 인도 가동 슈모디 샤 캐시버레샤 다전에마 도르드니 인 가동 럼rim바 데네마 드니 인 가동 맹가와 사드레 다 독스마 때베이나 데 해지 뒤져 지금 오문는 붙이기 지금 배신만 샤인도 자네 그냥 태솜 샤샤 배신되기 죄자 가리나 죄자디 시베이나 거바 가리고도 책 거바 zam마임에 포기 닝구 가도가 도스 거서 시시 딱샤샤네 애니신에 슝들이야 로존샤지 디 오문덤부터 다시 오문덤 라메가는 게 어다 다가 힘을 저도 센터 러시아네 디 온도 대배전다 사들이 아다 먼저 얘기 잡아 아다 잡아 전세 거대 용도가 오문덤부 거서 시상담자 오문도 진짜 잡아 마셔버시니 다 이지전도 대하신 용도가 사들이 인도 담바 지생고도 잡아이나 거서 쉬시 타네마 지나죠 알았다 어디에 뺏겨져 버려 나 오무 때문이야 아니 제게 명아선 뒤뒤를 셔셔마도 스트라다 제게 인더라스도가 engenen judi da 가서 딱 가자고 먼저 한 가지 지금 가자고 처음 먼저 지 온부뚜 마 지단의 차베이는 얘네 보모를 신한 거야. 지나서 같이 가야 돼. 아다 카메라 영화 못 뒤중으로 거버지기 캠부지. 얘네 유버지기 캠부자가 영어인 버리. 얘네 엔 디니 모두 캠부 주야 말해. 엔 캠부 십시에 질이야 미디 엔 게지지 캠부 자오여스 시드엔 캠부 터슈메스 엔 캠부 가와타여서 십시에 같이 와서다도 와 캠부 보모를 지나고가 신수 잡다. 자 디야 가야디 그 다방을 스톤죠. 자들이 인도 다디 15미싱에 딱 슬럼니 지금 답에 가고 싶어인데 그저 딱내라 다가다게미 가서 그래 천디 낭신 도야 지금 치면 되니 걸로 깨야 되네 애니 치면 낭신 도야 너 뒤에 주지 마 치야지 연구를 봐 저도 와디 다들 담바 치원도 잡에 있나 디 말에 치다디 말에 저 가장 슝주도 마 제네 람름샤 중나 다들 담바 지세원도 잡아래 야를 개별치다 해. 당연히 너는 명하게 너는 지나도 돼야 다 표 강생의 종을 나고 시샤 인생의 질을. 엔 마도스. 다 타바조진 이지조를 저는 뭐 치샤지래도 와. 자 뒤에 생각하시셔야. 다 안들디 슝들 로종보다 슝지래 디 조직을 로마 좀더 로마 아니 보도와 아니 되네 샤라와 다디 Geshe Langri Thangpa Sadre, Langsharnis, the Podovetas, that Pachiri, Podoveta, and the Say to Jay. Then the mine, Chagawa, Chagawa, Lojong Tunduman Zache, Dostuga. That Didi, Zawa, Katon Shungo, Didi, that Kasori, Shungi, Yavice, Nama, Chiki, Shin Duba Chiki, Nor Duba Chiki, and Landa Siki said that did it. The New is a lot of sin, Sandova, a lot of sin, and a barabara, those sometimes has all Hulu Shumina, and a Landa Siki Matu, what George. This Shai Hodoa. Nothing Yama, the Sibri, that the Lord to take you, and a Barara Shumina, Landa Siki Matu, Sisanta, the Pamushaki. What was in that? Neti Shusadi, Kilcham Jacundine, the Javat Jungi, Tishani, Shivri. Yeah, that day.
So, the text that we are going to use for our teaching this morning is a Kadampa text. And the Kadam tradition is a tradition coming from Atisha, where the lineage of the profound view and the vast practices became merged into a single lineage of the Kadampa tradition. And within the Kadampa, over time evolved what are known as the three main streams. One stream is the one that emphasizes the study and practice of 6 main texts. These are the Jataka tales and collection of aphorisms as the 2 texts emphasizing the cultivation of faith. And so the collection of aphorisms or Udana Varga is very similar to Pali texts. It's very similar to Dhammapada actually, the Udana Varga, which is a collection of aphorisms. And then the 2 texts, Bodhisattva Bhumi, levels of the Bodhisattva, and Mahayana Sutra Alamkara, ornament of Mahayana scriptures, these 2 texts are used primarily as a way of understanding and cultivating samadhi, concentration, and then 2 texts by Shantideva, Shiksha Samuchaya, compendium of training, and Bodhisattva Chara Avatara, guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life. These 2 texts are used as a basis for understanding and cultivating the practice of the 6 perfections. So these is one particular lineage, and then there is the lineage of Kadam transmission of Lamrim primarily, and then finally there is the Kadam lineage of oral instructions. So the first approach to the study of the Indian text is the foundation, and then the Lamrim and particularly the oral instructions are in some sense more abridged, shorter forms of it. And of these 3, the approach of the study of the text is the most important one. And in fact, there is an explicit acknowledgement in the Indian sources that the way of the practice of Dharma by an intelligent practitioner is the one that must operate from the position of questioning. So an intelligent Dharma practitioner will approach text with a sense of openness and questioning, and then will first of all try to understand what is the subject matter of that text, then what is the benefit of studying that, and what would be the ultimate benefit of practicing it, and what are the connections between these 4, and then between these 3. And based on the conviction developed on that, then one engages in the practice. But of course, for some practitioners, then they may not have that kind of mental capacity initially to engage in that way. Then faith is a way to approach the Dharma. And in some cases, for those who approach with the faith, then maybe a simpler instruction and shorter instruction and simpler instructions may be what is required. For example, if you are approaching the Dharma purely from a faith-based approach, then of course you will have to say, okay, the Lama told me that is the case and I believe. And beyond that, you don't really have the kind of the facility to go deeper. And this reminds me of a story. There was an abbot in eastern Tibet, in Kham, and one day someone from outside came to see the abbot and asked where the abbot is. And he wasn't in residence. And one of the attendant monks was asked where did the abbot go. And this attendant monk, who seemed to be, must have been quite precautious, he said, well, the abbot went to scare the old people in the village. So basically what the abbot was doing was, because he was giving simple teachings about karma and the negative consequences of bad karma and so on. So of course that generates kind of fear as well as understanding of karma. So the attendant said the abbot went to scare the old people in the village. So there is that danger. So I think that the intelligent way of approaching the Dharma is really from the position of questioning and developing understanding. So this is important. And so in the text that we are using was authored by Langri Thangpa. And Langri Thangpa, together with Sharawa, were principal students of Potowa, who was in turn a student of Dromtempa, who was in turn the student of Atishatipamakara Shirijana. And in this text, although it is short, but it sort of encapsulates the main essence of the practices of the vast practices of the Kadampa tradition. And this, because of the shortness of this text, it's actually quite a beautiful text to use as one's practice. It's also short enough to memorize. In my own case, I've memorized it many, many years ago, and whenever I have time, I contemplate on these verses and try to reflect and practice. So in your case too, it's short enough to memorize the 8 verses, and then when you find time, just reflect upon some of the lines and try to kind of make them real in your life, and you can really see the effect.
Yeah. For example, when you go to different place at the airport, you see announce the air service delay 30 minutes or 1 hour, like that. And then you recite that and think that it's helpful to less stress. Otherwise, you announce 30 minutes delay or 1 hour delay, and then more frustrations. That also, I think, during night, you sleep not very sort of sound, and wake up and sleep not come. Then just when that, again frustration. So then recite this, think. Very good. Now lastly, whenever I give some lecture on Buddhism in the West, I mean the Western countries like Canada, except those Asians, Vietnamese or Chinese, you see, they come from Buddhist country, but basically non-Buddhist country. So therefore, I always make clear, it is better, it is safer to keep one's own tradition, one's own religious tradition. It is better. As a change religion, religious faith, sometimes create more confusion. I always was telling one story, one Tibetan family, of course, a Tibetan official, a lay official. You see, soon after we came to India, early 60s, see, the official passed away, and his wife, and 2 or 3 small children with her. Very difficult. Of course, at that time, large number of Tibetan, just, you see, the way to earn is road work.
Road construction.
Like that. So then one day she came to see me and told me sort of her story, difficulties, tremendous sort of difficulties. Then she told me she received a lot of help from some missionary, some missionaries. Yes, at that time, you see, I think main feeder, large number of Tibetan or Catholic relief service like that. Then she told me her small children also, you see, they are, I mean, not only taking care, but also, you see, taking sort of education. Some Christian missionaries. Then she told me, now for this life, now she become Christian. But next life, she will be Buddhist. That's the clear sign of confusion, isn't it? So therefore, it is much better, you see, to keep one's own tradition. And then, meantime, as I mentioned before, now it is very important to promote religious harmony in order to develop genuine harmony. Mutual understanding, mutual respect is key factor. So in order to develop mutual respect, mutual understanding, you see, it is useful to know about other traditions, teaching. So those Buddhist, yes, you take this as your own sort of practice, and then non-Buddhist, you see, you can take, you see, some idea or some Buddhist teaching. Now this text, you see, two subjects.
So the main subject matter of this text is really two. One is the conventional bodhicitta, awakening mind, and the other one is the ultimate bodhicitta, or ultimate awakening mind.
So as far as altruism, infinite altruism is concerned, is, as I mentioned before, common practice. I think the theistic religion's way of approach also very, very powerful. You believe, I mean, according to that sort of tradition, we accept or we believe we all created by God or Allah. And then when we describe God or Allah, it's infinite love. So since we created by such sort of God or Allah, full of compassion, so we also have some sparks of that. So that give us some kind of sort of enthusiasm. We also some spark of God. So that give us courage. And then, since we created by God or Allah, so we can almost say develop some kind of sort of attitude, father and son. So son is a more sort of willingness to follow God's guidance. What's God's guidance? Love, practice of love. Like that. So therefore, you see, practice of love, forgiveness, these things are almost common. The shunyata, emptiness side, is something unique. Tam godengela, Geshe sagi, shat chesha. Tuga, gewe stepsha, gewe. Ojanda, tadusinda. Dan simja tamjala, ishin no gulala, tenja trebe samay, tatu chevon zimbur shaw, sa, ta degi. Ene, ta sayadi, naga chambu yare, the Gamma Lugiji as interfaith Tonduji Salia, or the any Sufi professor Chigi, and a Da Sandi and a condition secret. Then Da Della Toma Yoda Me, Tama Yoda Mess, Chosum Jenny, Chosubutella, Chulu Soso, and a lamb and Yaris, or the Dematejari. So that Da Shiva the condition stone. Sanjay Chene, Da said the Punguli tension that I amaris, Punguli then attack some Kataris. Tim member should use Samalogi, Da said the Punguli tension. Da said, then dirty soul says dirty. That's a Tomayami Sheduzane, Jidakoba with the Gangi, Jidakoba, Gove Nimutine, and a dart jewelry, Tomayari. Tamasam came into or Takshin Tiavineri, Nandru Tiavineri, that the Masam came into. Then Jidakoba Mendugi, Mutibi Shungi, and the Changja Hamibada, Jibu Nigi, Dalatoma Merisha. That Sanjay, Dalatoma Yemi, Zacha Duzane, Dag Dugshi, La Tomayami Samtangori. Dag Dugshi, Lusim Ni Cheni, da Nella Ravel Lusim Ni Cheni, da Do in Shevagan Samtangorba. Just a Shiva Toma, da Kangladen, Dado Davishi, and Pumbu, Dina, so Namshiki Pumbu, De Tomayami, the Samta. Then it's Jane Zane, Dalatoma Mary. Dagana Shingi, Changshembe Devada, Pajibu instead. Changsheba, not Mudi, which is the Geshe, Kuturu Kuruchon, Savishato, Dashi Kibula, Tamay Marriage. The Sanjay, Chirama, Devajiniki, Chirama, Chirama, and Kata Lama the Buddhism is good to Yari. She number to the monks at the and Dala Thai Mesari Sanjay Sarian Rodaji. That was said. What did it do?
So we read from the text, the translation, English translation is on page 6. The first stanza reads by thinking of all sentient beings as more precious than a wish-fulfilling jewel. For accomplishing the highest aim, may I always hold them dear. So in this stanza, there is this word, may I, and it really calls into question the need to understand the nature of that self, the nature of that person or I. Many years ago at an interfaith conference interfaith meeting in India, there was a Sufi scholar who made the point that there are three important questions that all religious traditions ask. One is, what is the nature of self? And where does it come from? And where does it go? Does it have a beginning or does it have an end? And he said that the great religions of the world propose different answers to these three important questions. So, for example, if you look at the Buddhism rejects any notion of a permanent eternal soul or self. The Buddhist understanding of the nature of self is a self is dependently arisen, a construct that is based upon the
permanent
unchanging or eternal. The Buddhism rejects any notion of eternal, principle like an Atman or a soul, and understands the self or the I to be a construct arising on the basis of physical and mental aggregates, basically mind and body continuum. And whereas all other traditions, non-Buddhist traditions, really believe in some kind of eternal principle that is the true I or self. So that is the nature. with respect to the beginning, of course, all the theistic traditions would believe in a real beginning of everything, including one's own self. Whereas within the Indian tradition, the Samkhya tradition, there is one branch of Samkhya is non-theistic, and the Buddhist tradition has also do not accept any idea of a real beginning, an absolute beginning. So there is a beginninglessness, because when we talk about whether or not the self or the person has a beginning, we have to understand that question in terms of whether or not the basis of the arising of the thought of self, which is the physical and mental aggregates, and out of which the mental continuum is the primary, whether or not mental continuity of the consciousness has a beginning or not. And Buddhism accepts that there is no beginning. Now, on the question of end, in the Samkhya tradition, it seems to be quite clear. I had a discussion with an Indian thinker that Samkhya, like Buddhism, also accepts no end, no possibility of end to the continuity of consciousness and continuity of the self or person. And in the Buddhist tradition, we recognize the continuity of the person will go all the way to Buddhahood. So there is the continuity of the consciousness will travel all the way to the Buddha. There are one or two minor Buddhist schools, some branches of Vaibhashika school that did accept that when the final nirvana is attained, everything comes to an end. So there is even the continuity of the person ceases. But that is one sub-school within the Buddhist tradition. But overall, the Buddhist tradition is there is no end to the continuity of consciousness. But theistic traditions on the whole, on the question of whether or not there is a real end, there seems to be a sort of no clear sort of conception of that. There is, of course, some idea of heaven and hell and judgment and so on. But as to the absolute end of the continuity of consciousness, that seems to be an open question.
So now, the rest, I think quite clear, is how to practice infinite altruism. And in order to practice that, seriously, how to deal with the troublemaker, including your enemy, these things mentioned. So I just read. 다는 심지어 당시에도 이신도 올려라고 전설적으로 somewhere 다도 좀 셔. 다 진진 현진진 고야지. 강도 수단 쪽에서等于군래 만다신想사고 타고 쳐도 좀 셔. 마 통중선 지부시가 봐. 지구선 지부시. 다 진짜 영어를 저런 것도 전유로 도서 영문 때마다 다시 모르는 채면 전도 돈은 더 버셔. 아니 맞게다. 차도다. 대선다. 그래서 개진 측이 왠지잖아요. 대대부터 영문을 연구된 거야. 러싱에 심지어는 대로 잡고 는 동시 리지터던 차와신 예벌가 진지죠. 매너 사과를 세워야 되는 거야. 달라이 세계 차도 그 시골라서 뭐고 경과랑 걸려봐도 자가셔는 배워서. 라는 지금 미스버 체인지는 대로 사과도 요새 먹은 거래지. 강하다게 팬다고 러버처고 건식 신이 담았다고 사고도야 팬에 너버쟁에 주무이나 땅만에 있는 청도도 서울지 이내다들 지겨 말했지 너는 뭐도 기회이 팬들만은 군놈을 마이너도 상하달라고 동네지 대다고 이제 최적의 도배지만 봐봐서 죽은 규모를 쉐벨 쉐메 청원을 주셔서 딱뭐 타만이부터게 단도 찾고 있는 거야 뒤송을.
So I will very briefly explain these verses because the actual meaning of the text is quite self-evident by reading the text. So the first stanza, which reads, "By thinking of all sentient beings as more precious than a wish-fulfilling jewel, for accomplishing the highest aim, may I always hold them dear." So this stanza emphasizes the importance of cultivating a right attitude towards others and really valuing the other and cherishing their well-being. And in the second stanza, we read, whenever I am in the company of others, may I regard myself as the lowest among all, and from the depths of my heart, may I cherish others as supreme. So this second stanza explains more specific way, how do we value others? We should not value others by kind of looking down on them and pretending ourselves to be superior. But if possible, one should view oneself as lower than others and value others by cherishing and regarding them as valuable. And then in the third stanza we read, in my every action, may I watch my mind, and the moment destructive emotions arise, may I confront them strongly and avert them, since they will hurt both me and others. Now this explains that in this practice of cherishing, cultivating the attitude, cherishing others, there will be obstacles. And these obstacles will take the form of anger, frustration, sense of competitiveness, envy towards others' success, and so on. So when these afflictions arises, because they hamper both yourself and others and hamper your practice, one needs to cultivate the right antidotes to dealing with these obstacles. The next stanza we read, whenever I see ill-natured beings or those overwhelmed by heavy misdeeds or suffering, may I cherish them as something rare, as though I have found a priceless treasure. Now this stanza particularly emphasizes for the practitioners of bodhicitta an important principle, which is to have a special concern for the underprivileged, a special concern for the needy, so that your compassion should be even stronger. There should be a special concern for the needy. And then the next stanza we read, whenever someone out of envy does me wrong by attacking or belittling me, may I take defeat upon myself and give the victory to others. Now this explains the importance of cultivating patience and endurance and forbearance in the face of challenges coming from others. And then the next stanza, even when someone I have helped or in whom I have placed great hopes mistreats me very unjustly, may I view that person as a true spiritual teacher. Now this explains a particular perspective where generally when we have done something good to someone, we expect a similar actions, behavior in kind, and we get really frustrated and disappointed and angry and hurt when it's not reciprocated. And in these situations, and in some cases one could, from a conventional morality point of view, one could even take them to to law and court and so on. But for the practitioners of bodhicitta, the author is saying that this is actually a special opportunity to cultivate your bodhicitta and cultivate a kind of a special attitude to these individuals. Then it says that in brief, directly or indirectly, may I offer help and happiness to all my mothers and secretly take upon myself all that hurt and suffering. This is, of course, presenting the Tonglen practice. And then in the final stanza, we read, may I learn to keep all these practices untainted by thoughts of the 8 worldly concerns. And may I recognize all things as illusions like, and without attachment gain freedom from bondage. The last 2 lines present the practice of emptiness, which is the ultimate bodhicitta, ultimate awakening mind.
Oh yeah.